Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. This Millennium Development Goal is of central importance to the development of all people. When women are empowered in their own communities, life changes for everybody, not just for women and children. The whole community rises in its ability to engage the world. Congo, as many of you know, has been brutalized by war for a number of years. That brutality has included in the last decades an increased level of sexual violence against women and girls. When I visited the Anglican Church of Congo in July, we met with ministries of the church that care for women who've been raped and girls who've been raped, and for their children, for the children they bear as a result of these rapes. In the Congolese society, in many of the tribal traditions there, women who've been raped are shamed, publicly shamed. Their husbands frequently divorce them if they are married. And in many religious traditions, they are excluded from the community. They're basically thrown out of the churches. In some of the churches where they are permitted to remain, they are not permitted to face the rest of the congregation when they come to worship. They have to face the wall. The Anglican Church there is an exception. They welcome in women who've been raped. They understand that they're suffering in ways that all of us suffer at some time in our lives, and that they are appropriately there to receive ministry from the church. There are projects in Congo which invite women who've been raped into community to deal with their own need for healing physically, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. We met with one group of about a dozen women who are part of one of these projects. One of the women there, we were told, a young woman, hadn't spoken for 3 years as a result of the trauma she'd experienced. A number of the women contract HIV as a result of this kind of violation. It's hard to get antiretroviral drugs in Congo. They're expensive. That's another burden on top of the trauma. The children they bear are often rejected by their families in the same way that the women are. The church also runs orphanages for these children. It's a societal, systemic issue. I was in Liberia not quite 2 years ago, and Liberia has suffered the same kind of violence perpetrated against the weakest in society, from infants to elderly grandmothers. One of the things we saw repeatedly in Liberia were billboards along the roads that point out to people that this could be your sister, this could be your mother, this could be your grandmother. Change the way that you look at women in the society. I want to tell you a story of hope, which I think is a piece of this ongoing series that you'll hear about. A movie was made a couple of years ago called "Pray the Devil Back to Hell," that was about the violence and the war in Liberia. Peace came in Liberia as a result of the organization of market women, women who had stalls in the public marketplace and were unable to make a living to feed their children and their families because of the violence. They finally said, we're going to go and insist that the warlords come to a meeting and stay there until they get peace. The next time they came for one of their conversations, one of their dialogues, the women went to the space, surrounded it, and sat down and said, you're not leaving until you're done, until you have accomplished this. And they succeeded. There is a similar kind of story told about Nigeria. The Niger Delta is a major oil field, as many of you know. It is also the site of horrendous pollution, and exploitation of the people who have traditionally lived in that place. The women were fed up with flaring fires behind them, the soot from those fires, the oil in their water sources, and they went to the headquarters of one of the local, we want some relief from this. You've promised it over and over and over again, and nothing has happened. the corporate types didn't want to negotiate. So they went back and they sat down in front of the building and they took off their shirts. And they stayed there in a Lady Godiva state, in a society in which that does not shame the women, it shames anyone who sees them. The company negotiated. Women have the ability to make peace, to build communities of justice that comes out of their willingness to act in solidarity with each other and with those who are most vulnerable. That is one of the keys to peacemaking everywhere. And I hope that your ability to see this series and to discuss it may give you some creative ideas about peace building in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the announcing that we have to do, but I would like to give you all the opportunity to ask, certainly to ask us questions, to address Bishop Katharine or Bishop Buchanan or Kathy or me or whatever about some of these issues and things that are going on, as well as opportunities for the media if you also would like to ask questions. This is your time to do that. I think we have until 2:45, and so we have a few minutes for us to do that. So by all means, if you have questions, bring them.
I'll just make a comment. Number one, that using the Bread of Life facility is not about Linda and me, it's about the people of Bread of Life. And the Daughters of the King, our chapter of the Daughters of the King, are really hosting it. And so we'll open our doors at about 8 p.m. those evenings and have snacky kinds of things and beverages for people, to be able to have a chance to sit
maybe
and
even
relax.
earlier, because I think we'll be wanting to talk about how it's going to be laid out before, so 7:30 on.
I have it on good word that Kathy's promised to make popcorn for everyone.
I'll help.
Yeah, that's a great idea to start things early. So yeah, you have the time to talk about it and kind of lay out a plan, and maybe if you every week, if you're starting at 7:30, you have time to then talk about what you saw last time that you didn't want to stay so late to talk about.
Yes.
You know.
Good point.
That's the plan.
Very good point.
Tobin?
Yes.
Have they made an announcement in any of the preview things that you've gotten about whether the series will be available for purchase afterwards, as many times they do for PBS? I'm just thinking of churches that can't or need to have that time to be able to regroup some other time.
Can you repeat the question about Mike? We're not getting
Okay, what I was asking is, do I need to tape it myself to use it in my parish, or does she know ahead of time whether PBS will have it available?
PBS will have it available. If you go to their website, there's on the top menu, there's one for DVD, which is not open yet, but once, I think it's maybe November 22nd, I think was the date. After the series is over, they will have the DVD available for sale.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes.
Bishop Schori, in your remarks about the story in Nigeria, you alluded to the connection between pollution and social justice. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you'd say a few words about the House of Bishops letter on the environment and the connection with social justice issues.
Thank you. I'd be happy to do that. The reality is that environmental justice is mostly an issue of poverty. The poorest among us suffer the effects of climate change, suffer the effects of pollution, suffer the effects of environmental distress more than wealthier people do. Wealthy people have the ability to say, don't dump that in my backyard. And where does it go? If you've ever looked into the realities of ship recycling, do you know where our old ships go when they're too tired to go to sea anymore?
Down at the bottom.
Sometimes they go to the bottom. More often they go to the beaches in Bangladesh and India and are stripped and taken apart at a significant environmental cost. the heavy metals, the lead paint, all of that garbage goes into the sea and onto the shore in a place where people are exceedingly poor. That's one very small example. Where does much of our electronic waste go?
China.
Same deal. Who suffers the consequences of that waste? The poorest. The poorest. Minor example. People with resources, either political resources or financial resources, have the ability to confront inappropriate corporate practices and to cause a change. The poorest among us have a much, much harder time doing that. The bishop's pastoral teaching is an opportunity for study, and I would commend it in your adult educational sessions as a place to start talking about the connections between poverty, environment, and justice.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Bishop, you speak of justice. You say you've been to Nigeria.
I have not been to Nigeria.
Okay. The places that you did mention that you were, and I think it's a quality thing to, to have the empowerment of women as a forefront on the discussion. But how, as you said, those women had to surround the warlords. How do you change the direction that people entirely against the empowerment of women say, instead of giving the women power, that's a beautiful thing, but those on the other side of the coin, what are tactics to approach them and convince them that this is a necessary action in the world?
Have you noticed what's happened in Saudi Arabia in the last couple of weeks? Over the summer, there began to be these stealth women drivers in a place where it's illegal for women to drive. And the traditional response there is to stop them. The police stop them and give them a warning and tell them, don't do that again. They put one woman in prison this summer. She didn't stay there for very long. But the king of Saudi Arabia, just a few days ago, said that he is going to ensure that women get the vote in the next few years, I think by 2014. 13 or 14? In a place...
This immediate election, though.
Okay. In a place where women have had very little public voice. Driving is a tool, but when women get political voice, when women have the ability to move freely in a society, things will continue to change. That has happened because of all of the ferment in the Middle East, in traditionally Muslim countries, where women have marched and fought and demonstrated alongside men. Saudi Arabia couldn't keep it out.
Anyone else? Well, thank you all very much for staying this afternoon and being a part of this. I encourage you to informally talk amongst yourselves for the next few minutes.
Thank you for getting this organized.
Yes,
thank you.
Well, thanks